Try these. Some clothes were shoved into his hands, Wiess turning him about by his shoulders and pushing him towards the changing rooms. Jaune rolled his eyes but didn't say anything. Sapphire and Wiess, working together. It was a nightmare come true. At least they managed to ward off some of the more eccentric choices. Quite a bit of thanks to Carol, who seemed to have an unusual ability to make Yang and Wiess clam up. There was probably something going on there, but since it was working in his favor, he couldn't be bothered to deal with it. Blue Eyes scanning the changing room quickly, as though he had done the surroundings outside. But the coast remained as clear as it had for the last 2 days. There had been no sign of Neo. Roman must have gotten his message. Both of them. It'll take him a while to figure out how I knew what I know, not to mention relocate the safe houses I incriminated. Him telling Cinder was unlikely since it would highlight his own incompetence, not to mention suggest he had a spy in his midst. How else could Jaune have known? Time travel? Yeah. This was a problem Roman was going to keep to himself, at least in the short term, and in the long term, it didn't really matter. Jaune needed the man distracted for all 3 or 4 days, just enough to get his family out of Vale. Roman wouldn't pursue them. The man was cautious and careful, not to mention he only cared about the city itself. The crook would be nervous now, on the back foot. His actions at the club, no matter how much they made his stomach turn, had only reinforced that Jaune wouldn't go down easily if pushed. He could and would break the mold of hunters. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. And how dirty they already are, he thought, looking down at his palms. They were clean, but he could still feel the blood there. It was strange how much that affected him. Time and time again, over 100 repeats, he'd done things just as callous, whatever was necessary to try and protect the people of Beacon. Why was he feeling so bad about that now? Because of his family? It was the only thing he could think of. Hell, it was the only thing that was so different it had to be it. Had he seen his sisters and the twins at the bar? No, not a chance. They were like night and day, not just in appearance but also personality. Did he feel guilty about his actions? Again, no. They made their bed and laid it. Plus, it wasn't anything he hadn't done before. He tried a lot of things in his time, from using dust explosives to kill Cinder, through to working for her altogether. Why should he start feeling bad now? He didn't know. It didn't make sense. But it also didn't matter. Roman will be out of my head after this, even if he believes my offer about leaving each other alone. Then again, that didn't matter either. Any hopes of keeping away from Torchwick were as good as dead, given the team he was on. Whether it was his team or Ruby's, one of them was going to get in the way of Roman and Cinder at some point or another. Odds were it would be through Blake hunting the White Fang or Ruby trying to stop a crime. But maybe a little intervention from him could help prevent that. He was going back to Beacon. That much was clear. But now it was also fairly obvious that Osmond wasn't going to cave into Jaune's plan and expel him. That bridge had been burned, and his biggest ally getting kicked out as good as endorsed him after the last conversation. And really, who could have expected Miss Goodwitch to actually approve and rate his combat skills so high? If he won't expel me then, maybe it's time to consider escaping on my own. This damn tracker makes that hard though. The best bet would be during the festival, either before or when it occurs. The anklet he wore would alert the authorities. But if those same authorities were already busy dealing with an invasion, then slipping away would be easy. That wouldn't be possible if he was being hunted by Cinder or her lot. He couldn't draw them back to his family. That meant he needed to stay off their radar as long as possible. Well, they were probably already aware of him now, but he could still prove himself nothing more than a nuisance to be ignored. He just needed to avoid their attention. I guess it's time to be a little more proactive about things. He sighed, rubbing his face tiredly. He said he wouldn't be. This was supposed to be his holiday, his chance at living a longer life and thus having more time before Beacon. But the passive approach hadn't worked. Trying to be unassuming and literally doing nothing in Beacon had just put him on Roman's radar and locked his position as team leader. The cause was fairly obvious. He hadn't been using his knowledge of the future properly, and for good reason. This entire loop wasn't meant to be about that. But now it was, whether he wanted it or not, and coming out of it in one piece was going to require some creative movements on his part, because if things continued as they did, then he'd be smack dab in the middle of it all. The White Fang and Blake is the first thing. That's what leads to the whole Paladin event, as far as I can remember anyway. Can't recall the exact date, but it's at least a week or so after Blake starts angsting over things, so I'll have a little warning. Options. He never worked to try and stop Blake from hunting the White Fang down before. That would have gone against the point of trying to end them in the first place. Then there would be the CCT if his memory was right, making sure Ruby didn't get involved there. After that was the mission to Mountain Glen, and finally the breach. If he could prevent all those things, or rather prevent his team from being the ones involved in them, it would give him the best chance of getting to the festival in one piece. I guess I'm going to be in a few more outings like the last one. But before that, he had to sort his family out, which meant dealing with whatever outfit was being lumped upon him. It wasn't as bad as he feared. Part of him had actually expected the familiar hoodie and jeans, if just to imagine fate messing with him, but obviously that would have been a bit much. The trousers weren't jeans for one, though their colour, a dark blue-grey, might have made them look like a pair. They were well fitted, neither too light or loose in the leg, and a little comfier than the uniform ones he usually wore. To complement, that was a black short-sleeved t-shirt. You could sense Yang's influence there, noticeably in how tight the shirt and short sleeves would let him fight without difficulty if he needed to. In fact, the whole outfit seemed designed for that, or at least as best as it could be achieved with civilian clothes. The shirt would tuck into the trousers, kept tight by the brown belt left with it, while the trousers themselves would tuck into a pair of brown boots they handed him. It felt good to be able to wear a proper pair of combat boots again, even if brown normally wasn't his colour. The ones he wore now somewhat reminded him of Yang's, though thankfully they only reached up to mid-shin. Pulling everything on, Jaune inspected himself in the mirror. Not bad. He wasn't normally one for short sleeves, but his bare arms didn't look too embarrassing. He wasn't as muscular as Cardin, but his arms were lithe and strong. What was more, he still looked somewhat civilian in nature while retaining a degree of combat functionality. There was no armor, unlike what he usually wore, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Armor would have weighed him down. Damn, looking good, Jaune. Yang whistled as he exited the changing rooms, walking up to the group. The Bond looked him up and down with a flirtatious expression. Love the boots, by the way. Heh, looked like he guessed that one right. It's rather simple. Wiess hedged, one hand on her chin as she inspected him. While I applaud not going overboard like some people, maybe you should have something a little more than a t-shirt and trousers. Wiess sighed as she heard Yang cough. And boots. How about a hoodie? He suggested. Don't be ridiculous. Wiess snapped. You need something a little more fashionable than that, Jaune. Sapphire was less brutal about it, but the message was still the same. He hadn't been that bad. Had he? Now that I think about it, Coco wouldn't be seen in public with me until I let her dress me up in something different. That had been a fun time though. Not something he could repeat this time, sadly. Coco, for all her aggressive personality, was actually quite the mono woman. The only way into her bed was through her heart. He wasn't prepared to play with those things anymore. How about we get him a jacket? Coral suggested, sashing forwards to drape a navy blouser over his shoulders. She slid her arms into them, he not objecting as it was put on. Wiess and Yang seemed to shift awkwardly for some reason. "It looks okay," Wiess said after a few seconds. "It just doesn't look good." Sable finished for her, the two of them having apparently seen something he hadn't. From his point of view, it seemed to work out just fine. The blue offset the grey and black, plus it worked with his eyes. Wasn't that good enough? I'm not sure what, though. "Hey Jaune, try standing next to Wiess Cream for a minute." He raised an eyebrow at Yang's suggestion, but there didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. Wiess looked up at him as he walked over to stand by her, the two of them being expected by the four girls. "I see what you mean." Sapphire nodded, taking the jacket from him. Jaune looked to Wiess, who shrugged in return. It looked like she was in the dark as much as he was. "You two, you wait there." His older sister went on. "Don't move a muscle." "Does she actually expect us to do that?" Wiess drawled, instantly breaking ranks to sit down on a nearby seat as the others vanished into the aisles. Probably not. Jaune sat down beside her, there being no other room. Saf is just used to being the one in charge. She doesn't mean anything by it. Wiess chuckled. "I suppose in a family so large, a little delegation would be necessary. They all seem to have come out quite well, so no one can complain." My Wiess. Is that a compliment from you?" Jaune teased, only to get a flat look in return. "Sorry." Wiess apologized. "I mean that the sisters appear to have come out well. Every family has a black sheep." Ouch. With the weird way Ruby was acting around him, not to mention the looks Blake had been giving him lately, Weiss's familiar snark was a comforting presence, and I never thought I'd ever say that. Are you going to tell me why Ruby keeps latching on to me lately? Yesterday was a bit weird. Ruby is just showing her affection, I would guess anyway. The heiress shrugged lightly, not meeting his eyes. Maybe she feels as threatened by your little sister as she seems to about Ruby. Jaune hummed in agreement, even though it felt like that wasn't the full story. He didn't spend as long as he had around Wiess without realizing that pushing her on something she didn't want to talk about was a bad idea. She'd start with weak fibs and distractions, but soon fall back upon anger and rants if pushed. Eventually she would just go silent, crossing her arms and refusing to acknowledge her existence entirely. It was easier not to bother. "You just thought about something particularly insulting about me, didn't you?" Her eyes were narrowed, glaring into his. "Oh, of course not. Who could do such a thing to you?" You're an idiot." She sighed, rather ironically doing the exact same thing in return. "But it feels like I've gotten used to your idiocy. Heaven help me. I can't even imagine having a different person for a partner." "Not even Ruby?" He asked. "Ruby? What on—" Why would I have partnered with her? I was thinking more that I couldn't imagine being with Pyrrha. She picked at her skirt as she said it, tossing her hair back. He didn't think she had ever been partnered with Pyrrha, not even once in his loops. Even when teams had been different. Random events could change and be influenced, but the sad truth was that Pyrrha didn't want to be partnered with Wiess. That wasn't something left to chance. The redhead made sure they didn't end up together, and she was a lot better at that than Wiess was at finding her. Still, it seemed strange to hear Wiess consider him more her partner than Ruby. This was the only life she'd ever known, but every time someone asked him who his partner was, he had to subdue the instinctual desire to say Pyrrha. She had been his partner almost every time, but also the first time. She would always be the person he considered his partner. Still, it was so strange to hear Wiess actually complimenting him for once. Is this leading into a confession? What? Wiess stomped to her feet, eyes wide. Her face went red too. From his experience with her, he knew that this wasn't due to embarrassment. Oops. Had he said that out loud? A confession? Well, it's just that you started by basically saying you like having me as your partner. He tried to explain. She cut him off by slashing a hand before her face. I said no such thing. I said I am used to having you as my partner. People get used to having diseases. That doesn't mean they develop romantic feelings for them. Wait, so now I'm a disease? You might as well be with how much you sleep around. I'll be surprised if you're not a walking STD. Hey, I use protection. I don't need the specifics of your sex life. You put it up first. You accused me of confessing to you. You were being nice to me. He knew that was a bad choice of words when her eyes narrowed into slits of ice. Not that you're not usually nice. He rushed to correct himself. Or that being nice means you have feelings for someone. Keep digging that hole, Ark. I'll look forward to burying you in it. This is the best entertainment ever. Yang stage whispered. Jaune's eyes flicked away from Wiess in time to see her stood at the side. Hands clutched before her chest as she watched them with a huge grin. His sisters stood beside her, each looking amused in their own right. No, don't let us interrupt. Please, pretend we're not even here. Wiess coughed and stood up. I trust you found the article of clothing that was missing from Jaune's assemble? And you trust well, Yang said with a roll of her eyes. She no doubt realized how Wiess became unusually verbose when she was embarrassed too. A Schnee couldn't show that they'd been caught off guard. They knew better than to give that away. But Wiess was still only 17, and not quite in control of herself as she thought she was. Yang tossed something to him. Here, try this on. He looked down at the pile of fabric in his hands. It was pretty thick, long too. A jacket that would come down to halfway between his knees and waist. Yang must have known better than to give him something longer. It would have made drawing his weapon difficult. We can't all have concealed weapons we carry around like Roman and Osvin. Pulling it on, he stood up and looked down at himself, noticing one thing immediately which stood out. It was pure white, with a few light grey stripes down the arms and on the edges. There was also some raised material on the shoulders, where one might have attached plates. In a weird way, he felt like a dressed-down version of General Ironwood. Not that the General would be caught dead actually looking casual. Quick, go stand next to your partner, Sapphire urged, pushing him with one hand to stand beside the shorter girl. The effect was clear the moment he did. With her clothing and his new jacket, they looked like a matched pair. Perfect, Yang cheered. Very funny, Zhao Long. Wiess crossed her arms. No. The blonde laughed. I'm serious. It looks really good. It's just similar enough to make you two look more in sync, but not close enough that it's weird. I agree. Coral grinned. I think it's quite the statement to make. Wiess looked horrified by that statement. Or was it the person who was making it? But Sable and Yang continued to gush about the outfit before she could say anything. Jaune knew exactly what Coral meant, however. If some people were to look at how they dressed, they might think that Wiess and he were dating. Well, either that or he was some kind of butler for the girl. Come to think of it, given his and her reputation in Beacon, they'd likely just think she had gotten tired of his crap and forced him into the outfit, and that he'd be too lazy to argue. It wasn't Atlas wear, at least not real Atlas wear, but it was clearly inspired by it. The fashion brand must have liked the look of the coats the Atlesian higher-ups wore. Are you happy with it, Jaune? Sapphire asked, having remained mostly silent up until that point. It's no good if you're not pleased. No, it looks good, he said. Color aside, it was a pretty good coat. The length wasn't enough to cause problems drawing a weapon, and if you wore it open, the black and blue would distract from the whole clone of Wiess issue. If he got into a fight, then tossing it aside would be fairly easy, at which point he'd be in trousers, boots, and a t-shirt. That was a good outfit for someone who wanted to have a good range of movement. He nodded. I like it. It does work. Wiess hummed. It actually gives you something of a more mature and experienced look. Oh, is that a compliment, Wiess? Jaune smirked. Ugh, no. Wiess frowned, no doubt recalling their last argument. More my surprise at seeing you look anything other than a lazy and childish idiot. Then again, I suppose that's just another reason to be thankful for Atlesian culture. God, don't listen to her, Jaune. Yang wrapped an arm around Wiess's shoulder, holding tight as the heiress tried to force her off. That's just how Wiess flirts. She thinks you look, tasty. Damn it, Yang, I swear if you don't let me go. Jaune's attention was dragged aside as his sister laid her arms on his shoulder, crossing them and resting her chin atop the back of her hand. You know, Jaune, Coral said slowly, while it is nice how you're being so friendly with your team and such, but when are you going to address the issue of your darling sister? Issue? He blinked stupidly, face only a few inches from hers. Coral was smiling, but that meant little. Her eyes were lidded. I wasn't aware there was an issue, Coral. Amber? Other than that one. He winced. She didn't look impressed at his response. I know there's something wrong between Amber and I, but I don't know what to do about it. She doesn't want to talk to me at all. Wrong, Jaune. Coral, please don't give me any word games. If you know something, please tell me. Where would be the fun in that, dearest brother? She asked. He held her gaze for a few seconds, the girl finally letting out a short sigh. Fine. You've become less entertaining since joining Beacon, but maybe that's to be understood, considering what you're doing to us all. You should apologize first. What? Apologize, she repeated. My, Jaune, I've always known you played games with women's hearts, but I never thought your own sister would become part of that. Games? What on remnant was she talking about? Her green eyes, normally so filled with barely concealed amusement, were now firm. That didn't help him, however. Not when she was still talking in stupid metaphors. You don't understand? She sounded surprised. I think by now it's confirmed that I don't. Can't you just tell me what I've done wrong and let me apologize for it? No. Coral, he warned. Her nails dug deep into his shoulder. Do you think I like to see you suffer, brother? She whispered angrily. Do you think I would do this if I had a different option? I cannot tell you because if I do so, you would not believe it. You won't until you realize it for yourself. Jaune sighed. Give me a hint at least, he said, glaring into her eyes. Amber, you said she doesn't want to talk to you. He nodded slowly. She could as good as see how Amber was avoiding him. Anyone could. There is a world of difference, my dear brother, between desire and intent. You might do well to realize that. She wants to Her finger pressed against his lips, silencing him. She intends to avoid you. She does not wish to. Why? His lips moved beneath her finger. That's the real question, isn't it? And you know, maybe it's a question you need to ask yourself as well. You don't seem to know where you stand on that either, and I'd hate to see you tear things apart than you already have. So saying, she leaned forward to whisper into his ear. I won't allow it. She backed away a second later, turning with a smile to rejoin the others. Sapphire and Sable looked uninterested, but the same couldn't be said for Yang or Wiess, who watched with almost bated breath. They couldn't have heard the words, not over such a distance, but why did they look so awkward? We ready to go and pay? He held up his arms, still in the clothing they were going to buy. Yes. As your partner, I shall be the one to purchase these for you. That was unexpectedly nice. He didn't miss how Sable winked at him. nor the considering look Sapphire sent the white-haired girl. Ah dear. That was the last thing he needed. He'd only just saved Blake from trauma by Coral. Can we take a break and have a drink? I could really use one. If you mean alcohol, then you can try again, young man, Sapphire said, hands on hips. I didn't mean alcohol. He lied. It would have been nice to get drunk and pass out, especially since he didn't tend to dream when drunk. Well, that or he just didn't remember it. I just need some coffee or something. Wouldn't it be terrible if I fell asleep during this? Terrible for you. Wiess threatened, turning to his sisters. I take it he can't handle his alcohol? I'll have to keep that in mind. For your information, I can absolutely handle my alcohol. Jaune protested. He drank more than she likely would in her lifetime. Though, that was maybe a little unfair since he'd probably done a lot of things more than she would ever in 100 years or more. Oh, he can handle his alcohol. Coral drawled, leaning on his shoulder once more. It's just that we can't always handle the aftermath. The last time he got drunk, he got arrested. Thank you, Coral, thank you. Jaune sighed, hearing Wiess's horrified gasp. I can't believe you! How can you be so irresponsible? His partner stomped one foot on the ground, slamming her hands onto her hips. Handle alcohol? Indeed. I have half a mind to ban you from anywhere in Beacon. Jaune sighed. Technically, alcohol was already banned in Beacon. Not that it stopped a lot of people. But even if she did ban it, well, it wasn't like he had to pay any attention to that. He was the leader, after all. What did he do? Wiess asked Sapphire. Does he have a criminal record? Oh my god, I can't believe my partner has a criminal record. I don't have a criminal record, Wiess. Jaune growled. Osmond had been as good as his word on that regard, so as long as he didn't run away, his record would stay clean. Oh, he got into a drunken fight. Sapphire oh so helpfully answered. He knew she wouldn't mention the results of that, how he'd been dragged into Beacon. But his strict sister had no doubt found Wiess's desire to limit his vices to her liking. He knew there was a reason he wanted to keep her away from his family. Unbelievable! His partner hissed. I mean, part of me finds it unbelievable that you have that energy to even fight something in the first place. But to lose your common sense to drink? Okay. That was a little unfair on both regards, but clearly she wasn't going to let him get a word in edgewise. It's ridiculous and irresponsible. Right, Yang? Oh no. Yang looked like a deer caught before a pair of headlights, eyes wide and mouth slightly open. Her skin was pale too, and she only seemed to be able to stare into his eyes. He could see the guilt there, mixed with fear and something else. Jaune shot her a questioning look. Would she actually have the guts to admit what had happened? Yeah. Yang broke eye contact, looking away in shame. That's pretty messed up, Jaune. I guess it is. He sighed. You know me. No self-control and a tendency to lash out at random occasions. Yang flinched at each word, as though they were being hammered into her. With the attention on him, no one seemed to notice. She seemed to shrink behind Wiess. Whatever. He sighed, shrugging his shoulders. Can we at least go for a sit down and some coffee? My legs are killing me. Gods above. It would have been a lot easier if I could have slipped off with Blake.